Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And Tim, are your bags packed?
My bags are packed. I'm ready. It's too far into the summer. We are way overdue.
Yeah, but the good thing is that we have the schedule planned, so there shouldn't be any interruptions of it, and it should still finish before the quote unquote calendar, or what is it, the Gregorian calendar end of summer. So
We follow the Gregorian calendar here, not the
yeah.
school set schedule or whatever you want to call it for ending summer. No, we are starting, of course, our Summer Slaycation. So this summer we are doing the found footage frenzy. So all of our franchises will be found footage series. And of course, if you've been following me on Twitter and following our Horror 365 challenge, you will probably know ahead of time that we were doing the VHS series. And this episode will focus on VHS, VHS2, and VHS Viral, which came out in... I can't believe these came out so long ago. It doesn't seem like it's been, 12 years since the first installment.
I mean, and if you look at it, like all the first three came out before we even started the podcast.
I know, it's crazy. But what's great about it is, these were on my radar from the very beginning. Like I watched VHS the year it came out, and I watched every other entry the year it came out. These were never one that I discovered later on after they had been released. I've been on this franchise from the very start.
Yeah, same here. Like, I mean, as soon as it came out, like released on Blu-ray, I bought them. Like, it was like sight unseen. Just I'm like, this sounds like it's up my alley. And I didn't. What's neat is how they broke them up almost. It's like this first three we do today is almost like its own little trilogy, and then the next three are kind of their own trilogy. Although, just announced the day of this recording, there is a new one announced, which I knew there was another one coming because I think they said that that 85 was not going to be the last one. But I assumed at this point, since they didn't say anything, we were going to have at least another year. But no, it's coming out this October 4th. It's VHS Beyond, I think. And it's all themed to sci-fi.
Yeah.
I guess like post-apocalyptic sci-fi thing. So that'll be interesting. That's like rarely do they, like the last trilogies. I feel like they're doing a theme. And actually, honestly, with Viral, they started a theme to their things. I mean, it normally has that weird little wraparound where they just find the tape. But I think what's so great about it as franchise as a whole, I feel like from the first, when it came out, the first one, it did things for found footage that like really wasn't done. Like it basically took everything you kind of hope for in a found footage. Like Cloverfield, I think did it first. I think like really started to show stuff like in a cool found footage way. Like they realized that they weren't restricted to just the same old, oh, here we are, lost in the woods. We're looking for this kind of thing. And I'm not knocking the Blair Witch, obviously.
Yeah, the Blair Witch.
Because that and that wasn't the first either, which a lot of people think it was. It was just a rebirth of it in the modern day. But it seems like it was very formulaic in there. VHS kind of switched that because they almost like just took a good story and made it into a found footage, where a lot of found footage movies, that's the premise first, is that this is going to be a found footage and we're going to go looking for this.
And I think the other thing too is because you were having different directors do different segments, they could get really bold with what they were doing. And so you had a lot of these shorts were doing stuff that we had never seen in found footage before, like special effects that we had never seen done in real time, different things like that. Like there seems to always be one segment in each of these films that like kind of makes you go, whoa, like I've never seen that before. And it seemed like in every one of these, there was something that just like blew my mind that I had never seen done in a found footage style before. And I love that. And then the other thing I think is, I think these movies work so well because I don't think there's a bad one in this whole bunch.
There's not.
This is one of those franchises that I think all of these are worth your time.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, obviously, but I think all of them are worth your time. But I think what works the best is the fact that because it's in segments, anthology format, found footage tends to follow a formula. If you've watched a ton of movies like Brian and I have, of very slow burn build to some big bang up ending. And that Blair Witch started that, and it's been kind of a formula for hundreds of found footage films afterwards. But I think it works well in VHS because they don't have that long 90-minute build up. So they have to get right to the action. So you get these like you get the sweet spot of the found
Yeah.
footage movies right at the get go with each of these. You don't have to sit through that 50, 60 minutes of build up, and I kind of love that about these. It's kind of the perfect way to get your nutritional supplement of found footage because you're getting all the good stuff right up front. It's like taking a found footage vitamin.
And I think this could have the distinction of being the only found footage anthology franchise, right? I mean, I guess there are other found footage franchises, of course, but
Right.
not where it's also an anthology in each one, I think, right? I don't think there's a franchise that does that. Oh, ABC's of Death, kind of, I guess, but that's not found footage, actually. Yeah, that's
That's
not
not
found
found
footage.
footage, yeah. So
Yeah.
I can't think of one that's done it. I'm sure there's other found footage anthologies out there, but I'm having a hard time coming up with one off the top of my head that every segment is found footage.
Yeah,
And then especially not a franchise like this, but there
right.
may be some like really really low budget indie underground ones out there, but I'm not just not aware of them.
Well, we'll have to dive into
Um,
Tubi because if it
yeah,
exists, Tubi will
Tubi
have
will
it.
have
Yeah.
Tubi will have it if it's on there.
Oh, one quick thing before too. What I like about one more thing about the whole franchise that's kind of neat too is that I feel like it goes like it doesn't like hold itself back in any way. Like it does like it's good like there I mean from like gore and nudity and like everything. It basically just goes it like doesn't care. Like it doesn't hold itself to any weird restrictions. Like cuz if you think about it, a lot of the found footage things, are not going to have too much because of the whole if you think about the found footage format normally it's usually like I said earlier it's someone like hunting for something or it, finding like or like a camera in the house watching what goes on and they try and keep it almost to this realism where here they kind of do they basically like anything goes like this camera like you don't know what these cameras are going to capture and they do it in like creative ways and they keep expanding and getting bolder and I think that's what's so good about this one.
Yeah, I think they really set the standard for a lot of these shorts. Set the standard for found footage that I'm kind of surprised more feature length movies haven't done. But maybe it's harder to do on a feature length film. But some of these like
Yeah.
the effects alone are just insane.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of good directors working on these, and so they're basically doing like really good horror shorts in the found footage format. So it's like it's not like you're just getting like some schlock people and throwing little things together. It's
Yeah,
like you're
yeah,
getting
exactly.
like quality people here working on this. I mean, if you look at the names of just this first one. I mean, Radio
Yeah,
Silence, Adam Wingard, it's like this guy now is doing blockbusters like Kong and Godzilla, and like he,
yeah.
it's great. And Ty West did one in this. I mean, you get like some of the best horror directors involved in this. And back then, like I don't think as many people. I mean, you might have heard of Ty West by that point, and some of the other a couple of them maybe, but I don't think Radio Silence was a big thing back then. It was before they did the Screams,
No,
obviously, and Anna and the other ones.
I had not heard of a lot of these directors at the time, but now they're like household names in the horror
Yeah,
community. So it's definitely fun to see. And the ones that are doing them now might be the like mainstream directors 5 years from now
yeah.
or 10 years from now.
Well, that's
So
the thing. I think from VHS 85 and the new ones have like already that like it's like now I think the franchise is so popular where you're kind of getting those like big people now already. Like 85 had like, Gigi Sel Guerrero and like really like big direct and then the new one has like Kate Siegel is doing one with Mike Flanagan, so it's like you're getting names now out
hmm
big names out there at the time when people know them now, which is kind of cool. So it's neat how that we got to see this franchise grow up and also these directors grow through the horror world. So
yeah, and we'll talk about it when we do our next episode. But really, the second, what we'll call the second trilogy, which kicked off with VHS 94, really rebooted this franchise from death
yeah,
because viral kind of almost killed this franchise off,
it did.
which we'll
Yeah.
talk about. But But yeah, it definitely got a resurgence, and I think now it's like going super strong because of Shutter,
Yeah.
streaming these, day one, and I think that's really helped boost their popularity. I think the franchise is in a very good position now. I would not be surprised you see a new one of these coming out every
Yeah, it'd be
year
like the new Saw.
from for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I guess we'll get right into it. What we're going to do is this format is we're going to rank the segments, Brian and I, and at the very end, which will be next episode, we will rank the actual movies in our rankings. But we're gonna for now we're gonna start off just ranking segments of each film and talk about what we liked and what we didn't like.
Yes.
So starting things off with VHS, this one came out in 2012. So 103198 was directed by Radio Silence, which is Matt Benelli, Open, Tyler Gillette, and Justin Martinez. Amateur Night was directed by David Bruckner. Tuesday the 17th was directed by Glenn McQuaid. The Sick Thing That Happened to Emily When She Was Younger was directed by Joe Swanberg. Ty West did the second honeymoon segment, and Adam Wingard did the wraparound, which was called Tape 56.
Yeah, it was funny too because Joel Swanberg is also in one. He stars in one and he directed one in
Yeah,
this movie.
we're not going to go through the stars of all these because obviously there's way too many actors to really read all these out. But of course, there's also some big names in there that are featured in some of these. The synopsis for VHS was when a group of misfits are hired by an unknown third party to burglarize a desolate house and acquire a rare VHS tape, they discover more found footage than they bargained for. And I will say, in terms of wraparounds, I don't think the VHS series wraparounds are very memorable. They're nice connectors between segments, but unlike some like proper horror anthologies, they don't have like that it's hard to call that wraparound a full complete story. I know it kind of does if you look at it, but when I've been even watching these back and I've seen these multiple times, and the wraparound itself has never clicked with me. It's never really to me seemed like a additional story to these movies. It tends to be a little bit. I hate to say an afterthought because that sounds negative, but to me, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's put it this way. I didn't put it in my rankings. I don't rank the wraparounds because I
Yeah.
don't know how to rank them. They would always be ranked last
Yeah,
for
I don't
me.
know if we yeah, and plus since the way this format is where it's basically short films anyway, for these segments, they're complete short films. The wraparound is I don't we can just mention it, but we don't need to actually rank it by any chance. But like this one was one of the better ones, I guess you could say, because it kind of had a cool little weird like creepy thing going on with the corpse and the seat, and then he disappears and then you don't know what's really going on and there's like some kind of like creepy element going on, but still I don't like even though it's technically I guess a story if you played it there, but I feel like that's if there's one knock on this franchise, it's that I think that is that the wraparounds are literally fillers, like, and it's not that they're bad. They're just I don't think they have the
Yeah,
same kind of like oomph that the actual segments have. So that's another reason why we kind of made that decision, not to like in like one of them. There's not really even a wraparound.
yeah.
I think 85 doesn't even have a wraparound. When we get to that, it's just that one of the characters from a later segment is doing stuff. It's weird. So.
Yeah, it's very strange. We'll get to that when we talk about VHS 85 or next episode because I did like some things they did.
Sorry, not 85, it was 94. 99 had the no wraparound, sorry. I think it was 99 that didn't ha
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was thinking of 85 where they mixed segments like one
Right, yeah,
segment
that's
might
that's
yeah that was a neat
yeah, I can't
trick.
wait to get to that because actually that was kind of a cool thing they did,
Yeah.
so.
All right. So the wraparound here was, as Brian mentioned, it focuses on a criminal gang who film their crimes, which I thought that was a good establishment. Like up to like it set the tone right for this franchise. Like this is kind of
Yeah.
rebellious. They're filming, vandalizing houses, sexually assaulting women. An anonymous source hires him to break into a house and steal his VHS videotape, and so they accept. They break into this house and they find this dead old man sitting in front of a bunch of televisions, and there's a tape left in the VCR, and supposedly this is what was on the tape. These various horror shorts. So I thought the premise of the wraparound of this one was really cool, probably the coolest of all of them.
Yeah.
But they kind of fell away from that as the series would go on. It became more and more to me of an afterthought. But I would say this was probably my favorite wraparound of the entire franchise, even though it's
Yeah.
not too big of an actual plot line there.
I mean, it kind of sets the whole franchise up, really. It
Yeah,
works as a franchise setup.
yeah.
So,
So Brian, I guess we'll just alternate between these. I'll let you take the first one, and we can after you read the synopsis, we can kind of talk about how we ranked it and everything.
yeah. So the first one we see is Amateur Night, and that's it's Shane, Patrick, and Clint rent a motel room intending to bring a woman there for sex. Clint is wearing glasses that have been outfitted with a hidden camera and microphone that allow them to turn their planned encounter into an amateur porn video, which again kind of goes right into like the wraparound. It kind of like you're kind of like getting that theme of okay, there's a bunch of a-holes in here.
Hmm.
Basically, while the three men are bar hopping, Clint encounters Lily, a mysterious young woman who appears unusually shy and says little other than "I like you," and that's played by, of course, Hannah Fireman, who has probably the best eyes in horror. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Her eyes look like a Snapchat filter. Like it doesn't look
Yeah,
real. I mean, they're
they're
so
they're like
huge,
mesmerizing. Yeah, and
mesmerizingly expressive. Yeah,
yeah, and she's so good in this because especially in this one, it adds that adds to an element of like a little bit of creepiness because here she is, they pick up this attractive woman, but they're like her eyes literally, they barely blink, and it's like so to
yeah,
see it better, it's like I mean, it's just pretty great. And I like the fact that they took like like they went right off the bat, like okay, we're gonna use camera glasses here because that's gonna give an automatically like different perspective of someone saying, "Hey, shut the camera off," all those things. Basically takes out a lot
right.
of the things that you get in that is in almost every found footage movie. "Hey, stop filming, would you? Put the camera away. Why do you gotta take it out?" Kind of thing. And it makes sense because it's basically the plot is like they are using those camera glasses and they are wanting to capture everything in there. So that's kind of a neat thing. And of course, it gets like this is right where like I was like shocked because I did not expect like and obviously we're not prudes here, but I did not expect the amount of nudity you were going to see in a found footage film because up until then you don't really see that. It's because it's usually
Right.
recording like people in like walking around in woods and public places, so you rarely get this kind of intimate thing. Or like Paranormal Activity would tease it like, "Oh no, hey, let's get busy. Oh, turn that camera off," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like I did not expect that, and I didn't expect the gore that we were going to get with this too, because up until then, I guess like the closest was Cloverfield, I guess you would see. And even that was like done in a different kind of scope. It wasn't like that really like crazy gore and effects that you got with this one.
Well, and usually, again, like going back to me talking about found footage, you usually have a big payoff at the end. So, and a lot of the found footage style is what they don't show versus what they show.
Yeah.
It's all it's insinuation and sounds off screen, and the camera shaking or something. It's not actual special effects. So when I saw this one for the first time, and you're actually seeing a creature in front of you, found footage, it was like kind of surprising and shocking at the time. Remember, this is 14 years ago
Yeah.
or 12 years ago. I'm sorry. But so it was a little shocking, like, oh my God, like they're really doing this like in kind of like a real time thing. I know it's not like fully real time, but it appears to be in
Yeah.
real time. And so when you see those effects, it's kind of amazing the first time you see it. This was always been one of my favorite segments. I ranked this one number one in VHS in this particular title because it's the most memorable. When I think back on VHS, I remember this segment over all of the others.
Yeah.
Before I rewatched this was the one I knew going in that I was going to see. And it still holds up. I think it's an incredible segment. So that's why I gave it a number one.
Yeah, because it sets the tone. It literally sets the tone for the whole franchise by being like, you're like, wow, this is what we're gonna get with this series, kind of a thing. Like, we're not getting the typical found footage of, and we're getting like, we're gonna get like, it basically say, oh, I can't wait to see what the next one is because like, that's how they start it. They start it so strong, so it's pretty good. And yeah, and Hannah
Yeah.
Fireman did such an amazing job in it. She's always so good in everything, so that was really good. That I'm
Yeah.
glad she was in this.
And you ranked this number one as well, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did as well.
The second segment is Second Honeymoon. This one I really liked. Married couple Sam and Stephanie travel to Arizona for their honeymoon, a trip documented by Stephanie. That night, they visit a Wild West themed attraction known as Wild West Junction, where Stephanie receives a prediction from a mechanical fortune teller. The prediction claims she will be happily reunited with a loved one and that she is very trusting and is easily taken advantage of. Sometimes later, a strange woman comes to Sam and Stephanie's motel room and awkwardly tries to convince Sam off camera to give her a ride the next day. This one, I love this one.
Yeah.
I had kind of forgotten about it, to be honest, before I did the rewatch. But it's got a terrific twist in it, and the kill scene in this one is absolutely brutal. Another one
Yeah.
where you go, oh, you sit up and pay attention and go, oh my god, like this, okay, now I see what this franchise is going to be. They're not going to hold anything back. The kill in this one is very realistic. It's very, yeah, like I said, very brutal, and I just loved everything about this one. I like the whole setup of them, like, because I love theme park stuff and attractions
Yeah.
and things. So that whole part like appealed to me. Like it felt real to me, like what you would do when you just kind of walk around and hit the fortune teller thing, and their discussions and stuff. I just thought it was really well done. I ranked this one my number two.
Yeah, I did as well, and you also so Sophia Takal had become, she acts and directs a lot too. She's kinda like a Greta Gerwig kinda thing where she, like, does a lot of acting and she excels in both acting and directing, and also Joe Swanberg, of course, is in this, and he's got, like, such an acting style that, like, I don't even know what to describe it. Like, it's just, like, slow, like, almost like he forgets that he's on camera kinda thing, like, he talks and he does this, like, almost like a mumble sometimes, but it's so effective, like, when he's talking about it, he goes, "I'm gonna play back," like, almost like he did in that werewolf movie we saw, the Larry
Yeah,
Fessenden did, where he's in that, where he's like, "Is that okay? I'm gonna do that," that, like, weird, like, thing he does, but it's always so effective in his characters, I don't know what it is, so it's like
but it kind of adds some authenticity though, right? Because like
right,
that's what real
yeah.
people would do, right? It doesn't feel actory.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's almost like in no matter what he's in, either and in found footage, it works even better, I think, because it's at like, but it's like it just seems like he's like the only person in the room, that kind of thing, and he's talking to himself, but he's like talking to someone. I can't describe it any other way, but he's so good in this, and yeah, and I think that's why this was good because I don't think you saw that was expected that was where this was going to go because there was like yeah, there were hints along the way that was going to happen at the end, but I didn't know if like just that we're gonna encounter somebody, like, in footage and see it, it kinda came out of nowhere, like, the ending to it. It was very abrupt, but it worked
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So the next one, it's Tuesday the 17th. It says, "Joey, Spider, Samantha accompany their new friend Wendy on their annual trip to a lake nearby forest. Wendy leads the way, mentioning accidents that took her friends' lives. When Joey's digital camera pans certain empty areas, glitch images of mutilated it was a sorry, it's too small. Mutilated bodies appear in the captured footage. After they discover a mutilated pig, Wendy declares everyone will die. Smoking weed by the lake, Wendy explains this is where a murderer killed many people, but the group laughs it off as a joke. I ranked this one the last one actually, just because like I felt like it could have done more. I like the premise, but I felt like the glitch thing. I don't know. It just didn't. They never really like completed it in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know.
yeah. It was, and this was a fairly short segment, as I recall, and
Yeah.
I kind of ranked it low too. I ranked it number four. It wasn't my dead last. To be quite honest, my four and five could flip back and forth. Honestly,
Yeah.
um, with some of these, some of these, and you'll see in future rankings between three and four. I wouldn't make a strong argument either way. There's a lot of mine that could flip around, but yeah, I ranked this one fairly low as well because I agree. I thought the glitch effect was kind of cool, but in the end, the only reason did not rank this one dead last is I kind of like the slasher theme of being out in the woods by a lake. That kind of reminded me of Friday the 13th. That's
Yeah.
really the only thing that pushed this from dead last. It was really more the theme. But I agree. I didn't feel like the story made a whole lot of sense or really kind of wrapped up for me.
Yeah, the characters weren't really, like, interesting either, like, I felt like it was just, like,
Nah,
bland, like,
yeah,
very one note. I mean, I guess that was probably what they wanted to because those slashers, but, like, I felt like there needed to be a bigger payoff, and there wasn't. I think that's why, because
yeah,
the other
exactly.
ones see, that's the problem. That's the weird thing with these. Sometimes they place like, they do a usually good job throughout the franchise of placing the segments in a good way, but I feel like this one should have been, like shouldn't have been after those first 2 directly after because it was so the first 2 were so strong that then you get a dud and it's like,
I think you might have should have push this one up to maybe number 2, just to have like a high point,
Yeah.
low point, high point, low point kind of thing going on. I don't
And I
know.
feel bad because, like, I don't know Glenn McQuaid. I don't know much of his stuff, but that might. I mean, I could be wrong. Everyone's like, "What do you mean you don't know him?" But I really don't know his name from this, and so, but every other one I know. So what does that tell you about this possible segment? It's like, did he?
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. Like I said, I just don't know him. But yeah, I put this one 5 actually because of that reason. I think it didn't grasp me like the other ones did.
The next one up was the sick thing that happened to Emily when she was younger. Emily tells her boyfriend James, an aspiring doctor, via video chat about a strange bump on her arm and how it reminds her of an accident she had when she was younger. After showing James around her new apartment, Emily hears noises outside her door. A ghostly, childlike entity rushes into her room and slams the door shut, leading her to believe her apartment is haunted. Now, this one I ranked number 5, but in hindsight, I probably would have agreed with Brian and maybe ranked it higher and put Tuesday the 17th below this one because I did like the little ghost girl effect. I really like that. And I love the actors in
Yeah,
this one. I thought the actors were fantastic in this one. And it was a precursor to all the Zoom horror flicks you would later see. So it was one of those early online video chat type horror shorts. So I I liked it for that. The only reason I ranked it so low was for me when I watched it back. For some reason, I might have just been dense
mm,
that day, or I don't know. I this one confused the hell out of me, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and so I ended up just kind of ranking it dead last out of frustration. I later went back and read the synopsis, like the full synopsis, and understood the story, and I liked it a little better. But I'd already ranked it, so I'm not
yeah,
going to
no,
change it. I still have it at the bottom, but I think it probably should have been maybe a little higher in
I've always
hindsight.
said our rankings are somewhat fluid in a way anyway, because it's always could be when you
They
watch.
are, yeah,
It's harder to watch. I mean, with this in the internal rankings, it's yeah, because you're watching it all in a row. But there's the only way to watch it. It's not like you're gonna watch this and then come back to it. But yeah, I'm surprised the boobs didn't at least pull you in on this one, Tim. But uh, but yeah, it was so funny because I think that's what like that was like it managed to you know why I liked it, I think, and not to sound like a perv, but the boobs element was a important part of this decision, but not for the reason it might sound like, but because like you said, this was the precursor to those video chatting back then was really coming alive. And you figure like that, well, why wouldn't you if you have a long distance relationship start showing boobs and to your significant other or guy, it's
yeah,
like so that's what I'm saying. Like, it felt really realistic. Like, it was what would happen. Like, of course, this guy's sitting there. He's away in medical school and hasn't seen his girlfriend for months. She's gonna give him a show. I mean, that makes sense. It like so it's kind of like,
yeah,
but and I thought they did a good creepy job because what is creepier than hearing someone who your video chat like Tim? If I said, "Oh my God, what was that behind you?" You're gonna be like, "What? What?" Freak that, and you're right. It was
yeah.
way before any of these other ones, and so it kind of gave you that like little like thing. And some people probably forget about this segment that and didn't realize like, oh my god, some of these other movies that did that probably borrowed some little elements from that. Because what's creepier than having someone else tell you what was that
Yeah.
behind you and you don't see it but they see it, you're like, what do you mean, kind of.
And you still see it to this day on like YouTube videos and TikToks. People
Yeah.
still do this stuff where like there's a ghost behind you type thing. Yeah, it's still a
Yes.
thing.
So I think that's yeah, I think that's why I ranked it as high as I did because it did have a lot of fun elements to it. And I thought it had some creepiness to it. So
So you rank this one number 3
yeah, I did 3 on this
of
one.
the 5. Yeah,
So at 10/31/98, it says on Halloween night 1998, Tyler, Chad, Matt, and Paul head out to a Halloween party but come to the wrong address. Believing they're the first to arrive, the quartet sneaks inside. They begin to experience paranormal phenomenon but believe they are in a haunted house attraction and have fun with them. And yeah, Tim and I are all about obviously the haunted attractions. I could have ranked this one a little higher. I think I wanted this one. This was one of the rare ones which I wish it was a little bit longer. 'Cause it was, like, right when it was, like
yeah,
it had some cool things in the beginning, and I wanted to, more in the beginning. I think, like, more, like, things that faked them out and the thing. It kinda reminded me of when you, me, and Kevin did the Mysterious Mansion in, Gatlinburg, kinda some of the little effects that were going on there.
yeah,
Like, it was pretty much an empty house. There weren't a lot of haunt there was literally, like, what, 1 or 2 haunt actors that somehow like, would just keep reappearing in ways. They'd have different ways to get to it, so it's
yeah.
very, low, employee thing there to make this attraction affordable, I think, because where it was. And so I think it reminded me of that. Like they used a lot of like nothing to make it creepy and like things like effects like windows and like remember that one thing with the ball where everyone we turned the other way and someone popped out from the door. Like they used the effects well, and I think I kind of got that vibes of this one. So I wanted to see more of that before it got to the reveal.
Yeah, yeah. I ranked this one number three. Brian ranked it number four. I ranked it number three only more for the premise than I think the actual execution. I just love the idea that these people stumble into a what they think is a haunt and it's actually a real ghost. I thought it was a clever idea. So I probably ranked it a little higher based just on the story than I did the actual execution because I agree with Brian. I think it could have gone on a little longer, but it was still a fun one. So yeah, I think honestly, I think my three, four, and five could easily flop around depending on what day you talk to me. But Brian and I both agreed that Amateur Night was number one, Second Honeymoon was number two. I think those are
Yeah.
rock solid.
Yeah.
And the rest you could, I think we could flip flop around, especially three and four. But yeah, that was VHS. I thought it was. I remember when this one came out. I was pretty impressed with it. I really liked it. I think that no surprise that it became a franchise based off the strength of this particular entry. And as we shall see, moving on, it got even better.
Yeah, this is funny because our rankings are all over the place on this
This
one for
one
this
is
segment. It's
this
kind of
this
funny.
one's completely crazy. So this one only had what 4 segments.
Yeah.
VHS 2 came out the following year, 2013. Simon Barrett directs the wraparound tape 49. Slumber Party Alien Abduction was directed by Jason Eisner. Safe Haven was directed by Gareth Evans and Timo Tiahanto.
I think so. Tiahanto. Yeah, I think.
Tiahanto. A Ride in the Park was directed by Eduardo Sanchez, and then Adam Wingard's back for the segment Phase 1 Clinical Trials. The synopsis here was searching for a missing student, 2 private investigators break into his house and find a collection of VHS tapes. Viewing the horrific contents of each cassette, they realize there may be dark motives behind the student's disappearance. This one kind of attempted to do like a more in-depth wraparound, I think,
Yeah.
because the synopsis is so the college kid's mother requests that these private investigators look into the disappearance of her son, Kyle. And there was this was confusing to me at first, but Larry, who was the private investigator, his previous job was spying on and recording a husband cheating on his wife, then attempting to blackmail the husband with the footage, which I don't think I caught the first time around.
I
But
did not either. Yeah, I did not like like this was a very like yeah,
it
this
was
opening
confusing to
segment
me.
was confusing. Yeah, it was.
But then after they break, so somehow that's not even relevant because then after breaking into Kyle's dorm, they discover this big stack of VHS tapes and a laptop, and then they realize the laptop's still recording. Kyle is on the recording discussing the VHS tapes, and Larry basically tells his girlfriend to watch the tapes while he inspects the house. And Kyle is watching from the shadows. So it's a very I thought it was an attempt to make like a really kind of in-depth wraparound, but it just came off to me confusing. I didn't really
Yeah,
get it.
really wasn't. Yeah, nothing special with the wraparound.
No. So Brian, I'm gonna let you take the first one because you ranked this one. We were complete opposite. I ranked this as my worst segment, and Brian ranked it as his favorite segment. So I've got to see what's going on here.
Yeah, so this one is called Phase 1 Clinical Trials. It says in a doctor's office, Herman Middleton is fitted with an ocular implant to replace his right eye, damaged in a car accident. The doctor informs Herman that he may experience some glitches as the implant is still in its experimental stage. As he leaves the clinic, Herman notices a young woman staring at him intently. And I have a very extremely good defense on why I ranked this number one. And no, it was not because of the boobs. I know you think it's because the boobs again, but this one, no, it's not the boobs. So this one gave me vibes. Well, first of all, you know me and my eye thing. Eye things
Yeah,
freak me out. So the nightmarish fact that the guy had to get an eye implant in there is bad enough. And then he, and then he comes home and just supposed to like adjust to it. For some reason, this segment always gives me an unease because of that. But also, I started to kind of get now, granted, it was not as well done as that, but it kind of started to get like a little bit of It Follows vibes where like no one would see it really but him and then the girl that comes over who claims to understand it. So basically anyone that goes to these, I guess, trials sees these ghosts or something. But it kind of feels like that to me where it's like, okay, you're now getting kind of implanted with something as opposed to getting a sexual transmitted disease thing, like, and It Follows, but the same kind of premise where you now got something and that you can see it, and like the average person can't see this. And so how do you like combat that when you're the only one that sees something? And that's what I thought It Follows did good, by the way, is because they managed to get the core. They established the characters as like they would believe their friend and kind of get on board with it. With kind of that was why that movie was just so good, and I'm super excited for the sequel. Um, but anyway, so like that's why I kind of got that vibes, and I thought there were some really creepy things in there. I'm jealous of that guy's house because he's literally got a giant pool, a video game in every corner of that house and like things. So I guess I assume he's like some kind of like game designer. That's the way I took that. I don't know. It could be Adam Wingard's his own house because he's the star of this one. He actually is also the main actor in it. I don't know. I kind of got like between the unease vibes and the uneasy feeling and the vibes of It Follows. I don't know. This is one I liked it, and I still remember being so excited that they came out with a sequel to the first movie anyway, that I felt this was just a great segment start. I'm like, okay, good. They're like kind of right where they left off. They're coming back with some cool stuff here, some neat things. It's like literally it's a camera that cannot shut off, basically, and it's gonna record everything. So it was something that was really cool. It's like you can't tell this guy shut your camera off because what he's gonna do? Like walk around, bring his eye everywhere.
With an eye patch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I like that. Like, he was forced to document. He was forced to make his own found footage movie, and he couldn't turn it off. I don't know. I just there were so many things I liked about it. So that's kind of why, like, that's why I'm not. I'm gonna stand on that hill with this one. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the reason I rank this one number 4 is because it's the only segment of the entire movie that I did not remember from the first time I
That's
watched it.
funny.
I did not. I was like, when I started rewatching VHS2, I was like, what is this? Like, I don't even remember this from the first time I watched it. And the other ones I did. I remembered every other segment, but this one had completely just vanished out of my mind. So I was like, you know what? It's got to be number 4 because I remember all the other 3.
Yeah.
So this one has to be, by default, it has to be last. It's not a bad segment by any
Yeah.
means, but for this particular movie, I thought it was the least memorable.
And that's so funny
Uh,
because, like, I totally remember that as the main. That I always remembered this was from VH2. There were some other segments I get mixed up on which one they were from, but this one I always
yeah,
remember number 2 just because of the way I explained it. Like, I was so excited. I remember that starting off though. It's so funny how we have exact opposite things with this one.
yeah.
It's rarity on Civil Gore, but it happens.
It does happen
Yeah.
occasionally. So we're not always agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
The second one is a great one. A ride in the park. So after answering a call from his girlfriend Amy, cyclist Mike affixes a camera to his helmet and goes on a bike ride through the woods of a state park. He abruptly comes across a terrified, blood-covered woman who begs him to help her boyfriend before she begins vomiting blood. Mike sees several zombies approaching them before the woman suddenly turns into a zombie herself and bites Mike on the throat. After he manages to kill the woman, Mike staggers through the woods, heavily bleeding, before he too vomits blood, collapses, and apparently dies. I love this one because I remember when I first saw it was probably before I was completely burned out on zombies, and I thought it was really cool, the idea of a I know it's been done a billion times now, but at the time,
Yeah.
found footage zombie was a novelty to
Yeah,
me.
people have to remember that this is from 2013. So you gotta go back in time. This is an
Yeah,
old franchise. That's considered old, this movie.
yeah. So I had never seen like first person zombie action. Like again, it seems laughable now because you're like, what? That happens all the time. Back then, it was definitely more of a novelty because I remember this segment got a lot of discussion when it first came out because everybody was like, whoa, like, this segment's crazy because people had not really seen this. And I still remember it to this day. When you say VHS2, this is the segment this one and Safe Haven, which we'll talk about
Yeah.
next, were the 2 that I absolutely remembered from this movie. So I had to put it as my number 2 because I've got something above it, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about in a second. And Brian ranked it number 3.
Yeah, and this would have been number 2 if the next one, which we're gonna discuss, wasn't in this movie. But and this one right off the bat, okay, so we have to establish this one segment was done by found footage royalty here with Eduardo Sanchez, of course, Blair Witch fame.
Yeah,
So, you're giving him like you're basically taking like someone who revolutionized partly revolutionized the whole genre of found footage kind of stuff in the modern day found footage, and now is given like free reign, like here you go, do what you want, and look what he came up with. This was cool because this one is how many times is this sequence like, you've seen this sequence? How many times have you gone on a bike ride through a park, you know? And it's such a leisurely thing, and you don't know what's gonna happen. You just see the guy, he's, like, going off on his bike ride. I'm like, "Okay, I wonder what's gonna happen here." And then you don't like, all of a sudden, there's just stuff goes crazy, like, from, like, 0 to 10 in, like, 5 seconds once he gets, like you establish what's going on. And then when he then you, like and then it's like it's so funny because it reminded me of a park that's actually out in California that I used to go to. So it's like right off the bat, I'm like, "Oh my god." Like in my head, I still remember watching it. They're gonna encounter a birthday party somewhere here in this park, aren't they? And sure enough, they encounter this birthday party and you got zombies loose. And so it's like where, it's like, where do you go? You're in a park, you could run, but like, usually, you gotta, like, kind of establish some sort of destination to go so you don't get lost forever, and then and plus, you're hit with such the surprise element of it. Like, they're in the park. They're not listening to the radio or TV at home like a lot of these zombie things, like, "Stay indoors. There's a zombie outbreak," or "There's an outbreak." They're literally enjoying their day with no clue what's going on in the world, and no one expected to be what happened, and I think that's why this segment was so effective.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And what's funny is VHS Viral, which we'll talk about in a little bit, their segment Bone Storm feels a lot like this on steroids. It kind of has a very similar.
It does, but I did not not in a good way, I feel like. I don't but we'll discuss that one when we get there, yeah.
Yeah. So Brian, take on Safe Haven because this one, Safe Haven, if you look at rankings of all the VHS segments, many people think this is the best segment of the entire franchise, not just this movie, but the entire
Yeah,
franchise.
and this one too is because this one's almost like it's kind of like that faux it's the first time it really goes into, like, that faux documentary lean in, which, the franchise does get to. It does get to that. It's not always the found footage, which is fine because, normally I would call it a cheat, like, oh, well, that's not really found footage if it's a faux doc. But when you have an anthology, I feel like it's acceptable to kind of change it up slightly like that. So it doesn't bother me as it would have if they like threw out like that as a feature film, quote unquote, and said it was a found footage when it was really more of a faux doc. But besides that, it's one of those gray areas. But anyway, so this one it says a film crew consisting of interviewer Malik, producer Lena, also Malik's fiance, Malik's best friend Adam, and cameraman Joni infiltrate a cult in Indonesia known as Paradise Gates in hope of shooting a documentary about their mysterious activities with numerous cameras, both displayed and hidden. The film crew is invited inside the cult's compound by a woman known as Madame. Uh, Inside, they find the walls adorned with bizarre symbols, school children in classrooms, and women dressed in white garments. The crew meets and interviews the leader of the cult, a man referred to as Father. During the interview, Lena becomes ill and steps out. While searching for a spare camera battery, Malik overhears a private conversation between Lena and Adam, which Lena reveals she is pregnant with Adam's child. And that's a setup, which is not a great setup for this, obviously. Doesn't really, like, you hear that, it doesn't sound interesting. But basically, what you're getting is someone infiltrating a cult on steroids. And I knew why Tim would love this one when I rewatched it, I said, "This is going to be Tim's favorite." I have no doubt because Tim is all about the cult documentaries and everything, and it basically they threw it in here with them, and they found a way to make this at some level it's super creepy because if you were in I mean, not to go into real life right now, but you hear about all these cults going on and different things, and it's like imagine being trapped in one, you can't get out. And it's like and you're like the enemy to them right now because you're in there. And this thing is like this goes bonkers. This is like it had to be one of the biggest budgeted segments, I would think, for what they have in here because there is a ton of gore, ton of blood all over the place, big set pieces.
Yeah, it's lengthy. I think that's why this only had 4 segments versus 5 because this is a very long segment. It's probably the equivalent of 2 normal
Yeah.
VHS segments, and it is a roller coaster ride. I mean, when you think it's ending, it keeps going.
I'm surprised this wasn't the end. Why would this should have been
I
the
know.
final segment. I think that's the one misstep with this entry, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. This should have been the final segment. It's one of those that it has numerous false endings where you think, okay, well, that's the end of it, and then it just keeps going and gets crazier.
Yeah.
And like Brian said, I'm a cult fanatic. I will watch every cult documentary. I think well, there's 2 reasons behind it. The first one is I was obsessed with the Manson murders. I did reports on those in high school because my granddad had a book. He had the book Helter Skelter that
Oh,
was
yeah.
like the definitive tome about the Manson murders. And I read that when I was way too young to read about it. And so I got obsessed with that. And then the other reason is when I went to college, I went to NC State. I feel strongly I was close to not being in a cult because I wouldn't have joined it, but I was like I attended several meetings until I realized I think this is probably a cult. They had this my roommate at the time had gotten me to start attending these meetings, and it was like a I don't know, like a self knowledge type thing, and it was the theory behind it was it's like self improvement, but it wasn't religious, and it didn't seem weird or anything. It was just like, oh, these are ways help you study better and help you do this and improve this and all that.
That was big back then, though. That was when that stuff was starting. That was big, those self-help things that ran
Yeah.
in.
So I went to a couple of meetings and it was fine. And, it was interesting, and there was other people there that were trying to help each other out. And then there was the reason it made me start questioning it is because one night he wanted us to hand out like go put flyers up in some of the other dorms. And I remember, so we took flyers up and we were putting them, and like the professors were like running us off, like, get out of here, like, stop putting those up, kind of thing. And I was like, what? Why do they have a problem with, like, this is strange. So then I came back and they had planned another meeting. I come back and they had planned like this offsite retreat. And then they start talking about, like, he's talking about this guy that is head of this group and they do some kind of like wilderness retreat. And that's where it started sounding very weird to me. Like, it's like, oh, we're going to go off site, off of the campus, and we're going to hang out with this dude in the woods for a few weeks. And it got really, really strange at that point. And even my roommate was starting to get sketched out. So we ended up just like dropping the whole thing. And then I ended up leaving college and blah, 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 blah. But I strongly believe that was like an indoctrination cult thing. So I don't know. But that's where my obsession with cults came in. So obviously, yes, I absolutely loved this one and ranked it my number one. And as you'll see on many rankings, many people consider this the number one of all time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a segment I think would have been like this could easily it could have been number one for me too if that other one didn't speak to me the way it did. But yeah, but I still think this should have finished the film because then you kind of like it was very mentally draining, this one, because it was so big and
Yeah, I'm just shocked they didn't leave it for the end. It feels like a big finale segment.
it does, and I thought it was. Honestly, I thought the movie was gonna end with that because it was long. This was one of the longer segments, and then longer movies, and then it goes to Slumber Party Alien Abduction, which would have been worked much better, I think, if it was before that one. But anyway, this one's brothers Gary and Randy attach a camera to their dog Tank to film videos of their lakeside house. Their parents leave on a romantic getaway. After giving them a list of chores, Gary and Randy invite their friends Sean and Danny over so the group can harass the brother's older sister, Jen, her boyfriend Zach, and her friends. While the group swimming in a nearby lake, ambushing Jen and her friends with squirt guns filled with urine, they fail to notice a gray alien hiding beneath the water and reaching out to them. Now, this premise I loved, and I liked
Yes.
the overall segment. But like Tim, I like it lost a ranking point for me because they killed the cute little dog, and I just cannot accept that. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was well done. And but like the thing is, I think like the problem is after that safe haven is just so memorable to then try and get your thoughts back to concentrate on another segment
Yeah.
of like that was trying to have a big scope in itself. It just didn't work. That and it kind of I feel bad for this segment because I think I would have liked it more if it didn't fall at the end of after that safe haven one.
Yeah, I think this really suffered from the ordering because I think this one would have done really well as number two or even number three. But I ranked it number three only because I ranked Phase One clinical trials as my last, and this one
Yeah.
had to go somewhere. So it's definitely not going above Safe Haven or Ride in the Park. So by kind of by default, it got number three. But I like the premise as well. I love the whole concept of aliens and found footage is cool to me because I've always been a big fan of like UFO documentaries and UFOs caught on tape and that kind of stuff. So it's always kind of aliens and quote unquote found footage or home video has always kind of seemed like a natural fit to me because of people filming UFOs and things. So I've always enjoyed that sci-fi element when they throw that in there. So yeah, number three for me.
Yeah, and this is 4 for me only because, like, something had to be 4 kind of a thing. So
Yeah,
it's kinda like it this was a hard one to rank because there were all like, I mean, there's one I don't know, this is just, probably the hardest for me to rank after that, like, pretty much 1 and 2 are gonna always be Safe Haven and Clinical Trials for me, and then but then again, it could be a day where Ride in the Park is higher too. It's hard, it's, like, tricky, and then, I could flip it around, but I think if Phase 1 wasn't the way I remembered it, like, it didn't, like, ingrain itself into me, it might have been lower, but, it just
well, this one it's a strong movie. VHS
yeah.
two is by some rankings, a lot of people rank it as the best of the entire franchise.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that a lot actually, which I'm surprised, but probably because of Safe Haven, but
Yeah, it is because Safe Haven's kind of considered the best, but I will say like every segment in here is fairly strong, so it's a very consistent entry in the franchise. Next up, things start kind of going a little bit downhill though with VHS Viral,
yeah.
which came out the next year on 2014. You had Bone Storm, really only 3 segments in this one too, which is another maybe knock against it. But Bone Storm was directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. You had Dante the Great, directed by Greg Bishop. And you had The Vicious Circles Wraparound, directed by Marcel Sarmiento. And Parallel Monsters, directed by Nacho Vigalondo. The synopsis here for the wraparound is a Los Angeles police chase sends a fame-obsessed man on a wild ride to save his girlfriend from a cybernetic terror. The wraparound here again, it's sort of like two. They tried to do like a kind of in-depth wraparound, but to me it just came off as completely confusing. It made no sense whatsoever. Again, I had to go back and read a recap of what actually was going on. It turns out that it's very creepy. Like the first is weird because he's like trying to like constantly filming his girlfriend, and then but then later that night he gets in this like high speed chase because he's following this high speed chase that the police are doing, and then for some reason like cell phones start making people go crazy. It's very weird. I don't know. I didn't really understand the reasoning behind it, and
I think
I
at
kind of
that point that term viral was becoming a thing, and I think that's what
yeah.
they were trying to make a statement on. But I mean, there was a whole subplot of his grandmother abusing him, and I don't know why that needed to be in there. And
It was all over the
yeah,
place. It was too much for the wraparound, and I think it detracted from everything. But the first segment was actually my favorite. I ranked it number one. Brian ranked it number one as well. That was Dante the Great. This segment is partially framed as an investigative documentary with interviews of magic experts, theater critics, law enforcement officials, and the main character interspersed throughout the story. John McMullen, a trailer park resident and untalented illusionist, discovers a cloak that was once owned by Harry Houdini. John discovers that wearing the cloak grants him the power to perform actual magic. Taking on the stage name Dante the Great, John uses his newfound abilities to perform in front of large audiences, becoming immensely famous. However, John learns that the cloak requires regular human sacrifices to work. To that end, he hires a series of female assistants and videotapes them as he utters an incantation and watches the cloak devour them. I absolutely love this one because I love magic. I've always been a magic fan since I was a little kid, and my granddad took me to every magic show that came to town. So I've absolutely loved anything to do with magic. And this one was really well done in terms of like the special effects. Was fantastic in this one. Like they did some really kind of showstopper effects for this one with the magic, the cloak being real. So you have like people disappearing in quote unquote real time, and you had
yeah.
the way the cloak moved was really cool. So there was like a great fight sequence at the end, which uses all these kind of crazy special effects. So this one to me was by far the standout of this entire movie, which I think is I think Brian and I both agree is one of the weaker installments. But this one I really enjoyed on the recap.
Yeah, I loved this one was kinda even though this one was, like, kind of like one of those faux doc ones again, like but the thing is what was neat about it is it had such an engaging story, and it felt so much like a faux doc you would see, like, on TV. Then towards the end, when it kinda got a little off from the, because it was showing these clips and everything, and then it became, like, more of a story you got caught up in, but still, it was just so cool, like that fight scene at the end with the one assistant that, like, and then it kind of does a little tease at the end, even like, so I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow like later on like continue the story in another segment, another entry, because it was really good. I thought that, and the cast was great in this. I thought the guy that played Dante
Yeah.
was so super creepy, like the way he did that. And I've seen him in other things before. I can't remember what I saw him in, but and then the one that played Scarlet was really good. His assistant that like kind of figured it out and was kind of like
Yeah.
fighting him. It was just really good. It was just, and like you said, like it was like with the things they did with the cape. It was almost like Doctor Strange kind of stuff going on,
Yeah, it's
and
like
it was
Doctor.
kind of,
Yeah, before Doctor Strange was a
yeah.
thing.
So it's like Marvel maybe like, see, like it's so funny. All these movies, like you looked at this, like a kid going back and looking at this now, they'll say, oh, they ripped off Doctor Strange. I mean, like I beg to differ, since uh of Doctor
Yeah.
Strange did not come on the screens until like what, like 6 years later than this, I think, or so. No, sorry, it's like 5, but yeah, you know what I mean.
I I felt like this felt like a Tales from the Crypt episode to me. Like it felt like a
Oh, totally,
from
yeah.
beginning to end. This was a Tales from the Crypt episode. Like I would not have been surprised to have the Crypt Keeper come out and intro this one and do his little thing, and like it just felt so much like that. I think it's another reason I like this one so much.
Yeah, like
Um,
you could totally have him going like, I guess Scarlett didn't enjoy her weekend at the Cape. Something
yeah,
like that. Yeah. Like,
exactly.
yeah, totally could see that. Yeah, but that's not a knock coming from Tim
No,
and I. That
no,
so.
no. I loved
Um,
it. I love.
Yeah, the next one, this one was like is interesting. So this one's called Parallel Monsters. It says in Spain, Alfonso, an inventor, works late on his newest project, promising his wife Marta that he will come to bed soon. His project is revealed to be a prototype interdimensional portal. Upon activating the portal, it opens to reveal what appears to be his garage. Alfonso witnesses a copy of himself. Look at him from the other side, revealing that the portal has successfully opened a gateway to a parallel world. The two versions of Alfonso cautiously greet each other, overcome by curiosity, and discover they appear to be completely identical. The two agree to trade places and cross through the portal with their own cameras to explore and document each other's world for 15 minutes. Now, you said exactly what I was about to say. I love the premise, but the execution of it was just off. Like I
Yeah,
don't know what happened. Like one guy's got like into some weird kind of like alien orgy thing going on. It's like I think they should have just made it simpler.
yeah. It was confusing to me. Like I understood the portal thing, and I thought that was cool. I love the purpose, but then when it got into the whole like people with light shining out of their eyes and their mouth and stuff,
Yeah.
I didn't understand really what was going on, and I think that's the reason I ranked it number three. I think not that I think the next segment is that much better because I don't.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think there's only one good segment in this movie, and that is Dante the Great. I think the other
Yeah.
two are interchangeably not as good. But I ranked this one lower only because I found it confusing. I just didn't understand it. Maybe I don't know. I'm watching these. I'm like I feel like stupid because I'm like not getting
No,
a lot of
it's I
these.
no, I think this one, other than the Dante, I think the other two, they're intentionally supposed to be like bizarro, because I think the whole thing, and it probably ties into the whole weird wraparound segment. I think that if you look at each of these movies, they try and keep some kind of slight theme to all the stories in a weird way. There's like little bits of similarity, but like in this one, I think they really tried to like tie it all into like this whole world has just gone nuts. It's crazy and everything's going on. And here's these weird stories you're going to see. And this is going to make you mess with your head kind of thing. But the problem is they could have kept this simple, this story, and they didn't need all the weirdness to it. Like it's creepy enough to go, like they could have made a little more subtler differences in the two guys. Like
Yeah,
you already know parallel universe, you know the shtick. I mean, back then the multiverse was, again, it wasn't Marvel's multiverse going on. It was in the comics, just not in the in on the big screen yet. So unless you were a comic book reader, you never probably heard the term. So essentially, like, but they could have made it simple, just like have him go in and she's married, like, but like maybe she's like just evil or in a different way, kind of a thing. Like they made it too complicated.
yeah. Because wouldn't that be creepy enough? Like even if he went in and like most of the stuff was same, but other like some things were just slightly off. Like, wouldn't that be creepy on its own? I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know why they had to bring such
it would.
bizarro-ness into it because it didn't need that.
And I kind of got lost to which one was which.
Yeah, I feel like the filming style for like sometimes I didn't catch that he was looking at the other guy kind of thing. There was something off there. So yeah, I agree. This one I love the premise, but something about the execution was off to me.
I kind of wish they could redo this one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The last one here is Bone Storm. Jason and Danny are a pair of skateboarders in Los Angeles who perform various stunts in the hopes of creating an epic skateboard video. The videographer they hired, Taylor, pushes them into increasingly dangerous circumstances in the hopes that they injure or kill themselves so he can film the aftermath and sell it as a snuff film. After they start a fight at a local skate park, the skaters become bored. Taylor suggests they continue the film shoot in Tijuana, remembering that he heard about a prime skating location for them to finish their video. Taylor calls out to their friend Sean, and rope him into joining him in their trip to Mexico by paying for everything with his dad's credit card. After enjoying themselves and buying fireworks, the skaters subsequently become lost and run into a mysterious woman. If that synopsis seemed long, it's a long segment for a very simple premise.
Yeah.
And really, like I said before on VHS2, this one is very much sort of like a ride in the park. You have skateboarders, they encounter these, they're not zombies in this case, they're like, I guess, like cultist type people.
I
I don't know
thought
what
they
they
were
are.
I thought they were like the undead, but not quite zombie undead, like the same kind of where they're eating flesh. They were just like resurrected. I couldn't tell, I honestly,
Yeah,
but
I couldn't. But same premise, like zombie-like creatures coming at them, and they're doing some really like violent fighting back. And I thought the reason I ranked this one number 2 instead of number 3 is because the effects were really cool. Like they had some cool first-person like combat effects, I
yeah,
guess is what you would call it. So I thought that part was cool. But man, this one dragged on way too long. This could have been like half the length,
yeah,
and I think it would have been very effective. It would have been a nice segment on its own. But for some reason, I don't know why they like it kept going. Like every time I thought, "Oh, this is in it," like it kept going, and not in a good way, like in Safe Haven, where it kept going
yeah.
and it got
This was
even
like
crazier.
enough already.
This one, it kept going, and I'm like, I was like, okay, I get the point. It's not that deep a plot. I get it. You're killing these zombie things, and it just never like seemed to end. And I was like, oh my god, I did appreciate the skateboard video because when I was younger, me and my brother used to go out and try to do skateboard videos. So I like that whole theme, I guess, because we used to do that all the time. And that was kind of a nostalgic,
Yeah,
brought a kind of a nostalgic smile to my face. But otherwise, yeah, it just went on too long. That's the really biggest fault of this one.
yeah. No, and to me, it was just like you said, like it did go on way too long, and it was a lot of repetitive things. Even though the effects were cool and it was neat, like it was like after like I felt like they just kept doing the same thing over and over again and like not getting anywhere with it. And it was
Yeah,
again, this one was like a little bit confusing to find out what was going on. And the characters weren't even like fun, all right? I didn't like any of the characters in it. So it's like there was really nothing for me to like hold on to except the gimmick of the close combat and some cool gore. But then to repeat it over and over again gets just tiring. You're like, "Ugh, again? Like when is this ending, this segment?" You know, it's just this was like a filler movie. I feel like there was too much filler in this thing, in this segment.
and again, 3 segments, so all the segments are much longer, which I think works against this type of movie. I think shorter segments are more effective in
Mm,
VHS. And you look at these you look at, with the exception of Safe Haven, I thought Safe Haven was maybe the exception to the rule in terms of length. But most of these segments, the shorter segments to me are the more impactful.
yeah,
Um, when you stretch this out where you can only get squeeze 3 segments, and then that wraparound was terrible. VHS Viral's wraparound I thought took up way too much time.
yeah,
Uh, that's another reason you could have cut this whole wraparound out and put an extra segment in, and this it would have elevated this movie.
yeah. And the only reason I think it's watchable is because really overall, and not watchable, I shouldn't say that because I think I ranked it overall like higher than I remembered I was going to. But I think because of the Dante the great one was so good and better than I remembered. So, like, to start off so strong with that one and then end on one that's just repetitive and long, again, is like a tactical mistake on the order.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's probably why you don't see many found footage, anthologies. It's
yeah,
right hard as hell to organize these right.
yeah. So yeah, that was VHS 1, 2, and 3, which was called Viral. This one, there would be a break between VHS Viral before VHS came back, and I think it's because I don't think VHS Viral did very well. This one was kind of like
No, I
I
don't
think
think it
the
did well.
franchise it seemed to be running out of steam at this point. So it took several years before they would resurrect it with the excellent VHS 94, which we'll talk about in our next episode when we bring you part 2 of our Summer Slaycation of the VHS franchise. So that's it for this one. Again, part 2, we will rank all of these films, the entire franchise, in our order, and we'll talk about which full feature we like the best. But until then, we'll see you next time. That should be dropping next week as you're hearing this. So stay tuned. More Summer Slaycation to come.